It's my pleasure to welcome these two fine folks, Bertony Faustin and Deb Hatcher.
So it's interesting for Bertony and me in the wine industry because we seem to have arrived at the same place, but we started out coming from different places. So I came for the wine and community, and I think Bertony came for the land and family, and then we end up at the same kind of a place because the industry is that way. Bertony, how in the world did you get from the East Coast to the West Coast?
Well, first of all, my name is Bertony Faustin, not Bertony. Bertony. Yeah. Enough years of Brooklyn Public School to butcher your name anyway, so that's no issue. But I actually was trying to get to California back in '99. Never made it. Ended up in Oregon at OHSU. That was kind of my career at that time, anesthesia technician. But it's funny because I looked at the map and, you look at Oregon and it's all green, and it's like, and then I saw Portland and I figured they got a hoop team in town, so it couldn't be that horrible of a place, So that was kind of the idea, is to come out here for a minute and then, work my way down to California, which obviously that has never happened. I've been here since '99 now. But as Deb was talking about, I came out here for land. I didn't even come out there for that either. For me, it was just time for a change of pace. I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to school in Florida, North Carolina, and I knew it was time for a change and ended up out here. But this whole wine thing for me, it all started with tragedy. Tragedy evokes change. It was my dad who passed in 2007. But a little backstory, my family's from Haiti originally. So my dad escaped from Haiti back in the late 60s, made his way to New York with, no family, no education, but for him it was that being successful in spite of sort of attitude. And that was kind of my legacy, or trying to live up to that kind of legacy in 2007. So after coming back from the funeral, I quit work. It was like, you know what, I'm done. It's time to do something different. I didn't even drink wine at that point. The Outlaws had about 7 acres of grapes that they planted for tax deferral, where all of our neighbors planted Christmas trees. And kind of the irony is my vineyard's in the West Hills of Portland, so that's not the typical location. But I was just looking around one day and I saw this vineyard that no one was using. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and make wine. So it wasn't the passion. Yeah, I know, it's funny, isn't it? Because that's what everybody else did. Like, okay, sure, go make wine. But it wasn't this passion for wine, it was passion for hustle. At the end of the day, that was bred in me. Again, I'm from Brooklyn, and the Islander joke, we all have like 6, 7 jobs and things like that. So that was kind of the thing for me, and that's how it began. So early on, and still now, it wasn't because of this great love for wine, but now it's the platform that wine allows me. So that's the beauty there.
Indeed, it does bring opportunities to help, and we'll talk about culture in a minute. I'm from Detroit, so how did I find my way out here? I was only in the Pacific Northwest one day and tasted Oregon Pinot Noir, and it was love at first taste. I was a gone girl. 3 weeks later, we had sold the 100-year-old 3-story house in St. Louis we just refurbished, and sold what furniture we could, put the rest in storage, sold 2 cars, gave a car to my brother, bought a little used little station wagon, put our first computer. It was a big Macintosh. It was 1985. And our German Shepherd puppy and some backpacking things. And 3 weeks later, we were working harvest. That's a cautionary tale, by the way. It's very, very costly to have done that. And then I've been in the wine industry then for 32 years. As the oldest person in the room, I will say this: don't give up, and keep hope up even if thing after thing doesn't work. I've started a lot of other things, including an orchestra, but I did not start A to Z Wineworks until I was 52, and I was shocked to discover 2 things. Oh, age, yeah, all right. I grew up. I'm a baby boomer, and so I had the sad occurrence of the assassinations while I was in high school of Martin Luther King. I struck for Black Action Movement at University of Michigan. It was a volatile time. Title IX passed the year I graduated from college. And those feelings about how the world should be never left me, even if I'm sad to report that my generation did a poor job with the world. There are still people who care and can make a difference. So starting a company when you're older, especially a business, I had never really been in business. I was shocked to discover my two core beliefs from college were business is bad and big is bad. And I learned that in the last 15 years of being in business, now the largest winery in Oregon, that I've been able to help do more good in 15 years than in the whole rest of my life devoted to that goal. So I've seen that bigger can be better, and it doesn't mean it is better, but it can be better. And it has afforded us a lot of opportunities to help our community and the people who work for us. We just celebrated our anniversary, and our HR gal collected all the people who'd ever worked for A to Z or Rex Hill that we bought 10 years ago, and it was almost 400 people. So it was so wonderful to see who had worked, who'd been to the coffee shop, who's worked for or attended the academy, because it accumulates and time passes and those things can make a difference. So for you, you have reached out to community in a different way than we did, and it's a pretty powerful way.
Well, correct, and the beauty about Deb and I, we're both here on the same stage, and obviously we have two polar opposite backgrounds, I should say, but we're both making a living while making a change as well. You know, and to me, I think that's the most important thing at the end of the day. And when a lot of people hear my story, I didn't start out to be the black winemaker. You know, that wasn't my choice. I didn't want to be anybody's pioneer or anyone's trailblazer. But it wasn't until 2015 when Oregon was celebrating 50 years of winemaking, and you know, you're seeing all the press, and everyone's talking about, you know, the pioneers, the Letts, et cetera, which was great, but no one was talking about the future, you know, and it was that, and I'm a rebel by heart, you know, I do things just cause, you know, and that's just like I decided to just start making wine in 2007. In 2015, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make my own documentary in order to share my story and the story of other underrepresented minorities as well. So, you know, women, the LGBTQ community. But still, that was just gonna be my own little passion project, damn it. You can't tell me I can't do nothing, sort of thing. But Street Roots gave us the cover. And from that, then it went to the AP, and then it went national and then international. And because of folks like yourself and Deb, et cetera, my passion project turned into a movement. You know, but still then, I still didn't want to be anybody's beacon, you know, but I had to decide to own that, you know, and that's changed everything. Once I decided the whole own who you are sort of mentality, it allows me to do me, be me, without any sort of regret on the outside. And again, and that's very ironic to the industry as well. People have this idea, or the industry, you know, paints this picture of what a winemaker is supposed to look like. You know, so early on, it was, you know, the weekends upon weekends when people would come in and, you know, who's the winemaker? And I say me, and then, you know, they just kind of turn their head sideways and look, and then they were like, well, you don't have a vineyard, do you? It's like, yeah, I've got a vineyard, you know. And again, still, it's that puzzled look, you know, and then, well, you went to UC Davis, or no, I just kind of self-taught, you know, I just kind of jump in. And it was after hearing that over and over again, you know, and it's actually one of the reasons why I dress like I dress. You know, what is a winemaker supposed to look like? So I wear overalls all the time to overemphasize. And, you know, and Stephen Green always gives me shit about it, you know, or my Timbos, and, you know, so I had to let him know I had a new pair of Timberlands on today, so for him. But now it's gotten to the point I can't not wear them anymore. You know, this is my brand everywhere I go. You know, I've even done black tie events. They never said nothing about black overalls. So, you know, I still show up in this sort of attire. But the beauty is, again, even with Deb being so huge and me being smaller, we're still, changing the world by changing the game, changing the perception of what, industry is supposed to be about. If you haven't noticed, neither of us have talked about wine yet, about the clones or the Chardonnay that we're drinking here, early this morning. Because it's more than wine. Customers come into our establishments or in our place in a certain way, and it's up to us how they leave, and that's what, I use my platform for. And that's the beauty about it. Now, we're more bridge builders, than anything as well. So changing that whole perception, that's kind of what I've been tasked to do now, so.
I agree about being disruptors. When I started A to Z in my kitchen, there wasn't a high-quality Pinot Noir in the world under $20, and so our goal was to offer the highest quality wine for the greatest sustainable value, and that's an important word in there. But in a few more years, my teenagers wanted us out of the house, so we bought Rex Hill. It was right at the recession, and we took a 40,000 case winery where every wine cost more than our A to Z wines, and we reduced the size almost 80%. That's a really stupid economic move, but it was the right move for quality, and so we did that. So that was a very tough time for our business, buying the company, reducing that size, the recession. And the result of that was we had a bank that believed in us. And I was talking to some folks, founders last night, about how they were funded. I was so impressed that Abbey Creek is all self-funded. We weren't able to do that, but we did find a good partner in our bank. However, we also had a few investors. One of them is Greg Popovich, the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. He's our biggest investor. And we had a few others, and that required a board when we bought Rex Hill. Our board, during that tough time of recession and so on, wanted us to downsize. Think about that word. We're talking about people. I just think that if we could remember what we're actually saying, that they wanted us to fire people. They wanted us to have people lose their employment, and we refused. What good would it do anyway? 2 years down the road, or however long down the road, and things are swimmingly, you have no people. It's 2 months down the road, you're in the same boat, and you still have nobody to do the work. So it was quite a battle, but we did not do what they had asked. So I'd urge you, as you start your companies, as you're growing quickly, to consider very, very carefully who you partner with for funding. I think it can make a tremendous difference in your future.
Well, in addition to that, I know this whole thing is about founders and entrepreneurs, but you don't have to get to that point in order to make real change. It's up to all of us to be intentional about what we do, where we go, where we shop, how we spend, because that's where most of the real change is going to happen, individually. So you don't need to be the largest or the coolest and the smallest place in the world in order to make the best change. I'm trying to out-cool Ian over there, but definitely, it's literally every single one of us in here, and I believe that, people are always watching, so we may not know the change that we're truly, creating, Stephen was there last week, and we were at the SEI event, and Alonzo Mourning was speaking about, if we all started out with just trying to help each other, how much change would actually really occur if you weren't worried about, what you're getting. It's all about, what are you doing for somebody else? And if everybody had that mentality, we'd all be taken care of, so.
I couldn't agree more. So we had, once we bought Rex Hill, a second goal, which was to build a company that could make a difference for good. And a few years ago, in the early 2014, we learned about B Corp, and it's a third-party nonprofit certification entity with a rigorous assessment to look at not just your environmental or social good, but also, are you a sustainable business? You could do all the good possible in 2 years, you're out of business. That's not sustainable. So also economic sustainability. We had already had all the environmental certifications you might need. We're certified biodynamic farmers, for instance. But the chronicling that is required by B Corp was eye-opening for us. We'd always tried to do the right thing. When we first bought Rex Hill, one of our vineyard workers got meningitis and was life-flighted into town. His family didn't speak English, so we got an apartment for them close by. I don't know if you know about meningitis, it's 50-50 whether you live. And he did, but he had it's a long recovery process. And he was very worried about his job because I don't know what our policy was then, but we were just getting going. And we said, don't worry about it. You need to take all the time that you need, which was about 6 months, maybe 7 months, I don't remember. Then, of course, we paid for his health care. If we had had that in writing at that time and everyone had gotten meningitis, we would, of course, been out of business. But today, we have that kind of policy written down, and we hadn't thought too much about that. We pay for education, we pay for volunteer time off, we pay 100% of our employees' health benefit premiums, we pay for a lot of things, and that's all chronicled now that we're a stable business. But what B Corp does, even if you didn't become a B Corp and you looked at their assessment, and they have a quick assessment for free, you get ideas on how to make sure that you have these policies written down, how it's fair across the board. We have over 50% women and underrepresented populations in our management. We just have the second person, our bottling supervisor, Meg Arizzola, who was accepted to the year-long Hispanic Leadership Program. Things like that have to be across the board. It has to be fair for everyone.
And again, just testament to Deb here with A to Z Wines. She's changing the world by changing the game. The whole perception of, your winery. And I mean, if you poll anybody on the street, the first thing people think is pretentious, right? Again, because we allow that, to still occur or in our minds. But, A to Z Wineworks being the largest, and they're probably the furthest away from, that idea of pretension, when you come into her space. At the end of the day, it's all about breaking bread. That's kind of how I look at things. So.
Well, there's other ways. Talk a little bit about the movie. I mean, it's so exciting.
So the documentary is called Red, White, and Black. And again, as I mentioned, it's all about, sharing my story, underrepresented minorities. I've got Jesus Guillen of White Rose and Guillen Family Wines, and I believe he's Oregon's first recorded Mexican winemaker. I've got Remy Drapkin of Remy Wines. She's a woman and a lesbian. For me, I mean, as you guys can see, I'm black all day, right? You walk into the tasting room, and if it's an issue, it's there. But imagine how many times she has to deal with, does your husband make wine? And she has to decide whether she needs to out herself every single time somebody asks that question. So again, and it's simple things, like that. I've got Andre Mack, who actually lives in New York, but he comes here and, makes all of his wine, and he's international. And then we've got Jared Sleet, he's assistant winemaker at Rocco Wines. And the beauty for that, Jared was the only one who actually didn't own a winery. He worked there. So I donated a ton of fruit to him last year, so we did a collaborative label together, and that's kind of the beauty. And the things that I do, I mean, Abbey Creek can make a new wine every season. That's no big deal, but why not do something that's going to make a difference? We do collaborative and one-off labels for scholarships. There's the Oregon Dove Scholarship that helps young women from high school to transition into college. I call that one Aphrodite. I nickname all my wines as well. Just because vintages don't really tell you anything, wear a name, the juicy fruit, big sexy, etc. It gives you a different perception of how you're going to enjoy this wine, etc. So that's kind of the beauty. And I pride myself in being that hip hop winery. You know, when you come into the tasting room, that's what we play and do. I've got a quick story, but one of our art nights, we host art nights, and I try to match my music to my artists, and we had a DJ in the house, and we're doing our thing, and there was this older woman, probably close to her 70s, that walked in off the street, and she said, "What was going on?" And then I explained, and hindsight, I'm thinking she's gonna turn around and leave. But about 15 minutes later, she's over at the DJ booth, you know, with her glass of wine and bobbing her head. And for me, that was really success. You know, the fact that, you know, we were able to bridge these gaps and have such a diverse crowd, you know, and then I call it the ghetto cheers, because people come and just want to hang out, you know, and then others see the same thing and those same feelings, you know, so I think, again, that's where the most change is coming from. You know, it's just us being 100 in who we are and what we do, you know, so that's kind of the beauty there. So that's how we're looking at doing things. As for the film, we're actually done with it. We're in post-production. It was right about to go to Sundance last Sunday, but our my editor had a tragedy, so we decided to pull it. But, you know, stay tuned, and it'll be coming out. We're looking at Tribeca next, and we'll be on the road for doing that. But also, it's just kind of ironic how just when you're doing good things and great things happen, there's actually a reality show that is being filmed in Oregon, and it's called Best Bottle. And the first season is Oregon versus California, and I'm on Team Oregon as well. So it's kind of, that's the fun stuff. Just tell me where to stand and smile. You know, that's the beauty there. But there's a potential of a 5 million viewer base, and it'll be a CBS show and all of that good stuff as well. So that's the beauty there.
Super fun, reaching millions of people through a tiny winery. Isn't that amazing? I agree that, yeah, well.
Just saying. Nothing tiny about me.
Okay. I do think that fun and culture is a very important component. We have a winery Olympics every couple years, and we bring in our salespeople from around the country, and we close the entire company down. Can you imagine what that might cost for that day? And we do, we have teams, and we do the march, and we have all of our events and so on, where we're on teams with someone from every different department. Things like that, we do a lot of things like that, I do think can make a big difference. How we feel and behave during harvest, for instance, can make a difference to that wine. We believe that every bottle of wine is going to carry that with it out into the world. So before harvest, we have interns from around the world, usually almost 30 interns. We've had intern from Kenya, one from India, one from Jamaica, from all the usual suspects. And that community is exciting, but we will talk before harvest about how maybe it's late at night, you're cold, you're wet, it could be raining, you're dead tired, you want to go home, and you see out of the corner of your eye somebody struggling maybe with a hose over here. It'd be really easy to just ignore that, finish your task and wrap up, but if you go over and help, what a difference that can make, what a difference just a smile can make. And we think that gives us literally millions of opportunity to take a little brightness and joy out in the world and think about those kinds of things. Every time we toast, we like to toast. We savor the tops off and toast as a company all the time, and we talk about that, what we're putting into each bottle, because we're not making a product. What we do takes 1 year of time, labor, and love, and we sell you a bottle of wine, and that's a different thing.
Again, I seen her smiling when she's talking about harvest is kind of the thing that puts us all back on that even plane. So it doesn't matter how many bottles you sell or how much fruit you bring in, but we're all in the same, in the same point here. We're gambling with Mother Nature about when should we bring the fruit in? Did we bring the fruit in or not? And once we pick, you're working until the fruit's gone. And that's the thing. And like she's saying, we're all working all day, and then you're fatigued. But that's kind of that universal across the board, that the equalizer, I guess, we should say. But I'm not sure about you, Deb, but I figure, why don't we take some questions if anybody has as well, as opposed to me just talking at you all day also.
I like that idea. I was just going to say the one last thing Mitch asked us to mention, which is the industry is very collaborative, and that's been unusual in the wine world, except here in Oregon. And that hearing about even the sneaker culture or the coffee culture or anything else, there's no reason we can't all have industries that are collaborative instead of only competitive, and I think that has served Oregon well.